Hi, I'm Jacqueline, and the channel is the Meier The Merrier. This is going to be kind of a meshed together couple of videos. Steve and I started doing a video on episode 3. We didn't really do the intro very well, and I decided that we would probably start to do another one in place of it. And then he ended up going to Singapore. I'm now in Phuket, and we haven't gotten the video out yet. The kids are downstairs. We're staying at the Marriott Courtyard here in Phuket town, which is great. They have a kids club, and they're being entertained very nicely. So I'm just going to introduce ourselves and say that we are here in Thailand. We generally live on Koh Samui. And the White Lotus was filmed in Koh Samui, Thailand for season 3. This is episode 3, and I'm going to talk with you about some of the things that might have popped into your mind as questions about living or visiting Koh Samui, Thailand, based on what you saw in episode 3 of White Lotus. The channel is the Meier The Merrier. We are a family of 5 who left the United States in August of 2023 for a life-enriching experience for our family. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. This episode starts off with the scene of a rainstorm that's happening in the middle of the night. And that, it can rain, of course, year-round in Koh Samui. It doesn't rain very frequently in the months of March, and especially not April. But it does rain a lot in the rainy season.
We've had just a little bit of rain in March.
Right.
Not much.
So, but rainy season kind of starts maybe September, October. Mid-October. Yeah. And then goes very strong into November, where you see a lot of rain. And then December is when it's supposed to end. Now, this year, we saw that there wasn't much rain early in the rainy season. But at the end, in December, there was just an incredible storm that was seeming,
5 or 6 days.
Yeah, 5 or 6 days where almost nothing happened. And then
we had visitors.
And we had visitors. This is a bad time for them to come visit. And then again in February, we were happily out of the country when it happened, but there was a giant storm in February too. So it can happen. The rain does occur. Giant storms do happen outside of rainy season. But again, if you're trying to avoid rainy season in Koh Samui, not all parts of Thailand.
It's different everywhere.
Yeah. Then you should avoid definitely November, probably December. If you wanted to get some really cheap hotels and airfare, that might be the time to do it then. I mean, sometimes
it's still hot.
It's still hot, but it's nice.
The sea's not, the Gulf isn't very nice.
Right.
There'll be bigger waves and
some breezes. But it might be a really good time actually to visit if you're kind of on a budget. All right. Moving on, there is a gardener that you see in this very early morning at the resort. And this gardener is out clipping with clippers on these beautiful hedges. And you think, well, why would he do that? And the answer is because he's clipping very early in the morning at a resort where everybody wants peace. So yes, there will be people sweeping rather than blowing, and clipping with clippers rather than some kind of a powered clipper system.
Our villa is across the road from a resort, and all the time when I bring the kids to school, they're out there sweeping the leaves off the road, and
because the road can get quite
And I thought
slippery.
the same thing. I'm like, boy, that would be a quick job if you had a leaf blower.
Yeah,
because that's what I use. But I don't do it super early in the morning.
That's right. All right. And then there's a situation where there's conversation between the three women and Valentin. Valentin is a Russian who works at the White Lotus, and he's been there for 3 years. And what we know is that there is a very high Russian population. So we talked last episode about a very large French population, and that's generally in the southern part of the island. There's a large Russian population. I don't know that that's necessarily
I don't know how
centered.
big the Russian population is, but it's big enough that they have a church here.
That's true. And I do know that there is, I think when we think of a larger Russian population, perhaps we think of Phuket. But definitely there's a decent amount. If you're Russian and you want to find people who speak Russian, then you'll come here and you'll find lots of that.
Phuket, so much so that a lot of the signs and the menus and things like that have Russian on them. When you go to the airport, we flew out of the airport recently in Phuket, and all the signs had been redone with Russian on them. So
I didn't remember that. Okay.
Yeah, and that wasn't something that was there before.
Okay. All right. So you'll remember one of the young adults, the youngest of the young adults. He's actually just getting out of high school. This is Lachlan, and he's part of that family.
I don't know any of their names.
Yeah, I know all of their names, but that's who we are. So he shows his dad a video of a tsunami, and the tsunami. He says, and this is a quote. He said it here. He said it was here, the next beach over. So he's claiming that this tsunami took place on Koh Samui, and the answer to that is that's absolutely not true. We did some additional research to find this out. Yeah. There was a giant tsunami on the Andaman Seaside.
Remember. There's a series on Netflix about it right now, in 2004.
It was 21 years ago now, and it was a giant tsunami, but it happened on the other side of the peninsula or isthmus or whatever, and but it did not make it over around that peninsula into the Gulf of Thailand side. So when we talk a little bit about it, I mean, we were doing all kinds of research, and it said yes, it is possible that there could be a tsunami. Most likely, it would be less significant.
Yes, it wouldn't be as devastating.
And it would have to be something that occurred at the earthquake in China
Sea,
every
South 400
China Sea.
years, and the earthquake would have to occur in the South China Sea for it to affect here.
So if you are worried about tsunamis and that makes you not want to come to Koh Samui, it should actually make you not want to go to Phuket. It should make you be okay with coming to Samui. Again,
and we're going to Phuket.
And we are going
in
to Phuket.
a couple of weeks, and now I'm nervous because of all the earthquakes.
But so all around Phuket, you'll see places that have tsunami evacuation routes and stuff like that.
Protocols at the resorts. This is where you go if there's a tsunami, things like that. So.
They're very prepared for it now. Again, a lot of things have been put in place in that 20-year period. And then, so we see Saxon. So this is the oldest of the three young adults, and his sister Piper. And he is saying that they traveled 35 hours in order to get to Thailand for her. And I'm buying that.
Yeah. Depends where they were coming from.
Right.
Yeah. It takes us about 24 hours with a 4-hour layover.
Right. So we're coming from Chicago, which is obviously a major airport. We can start in Chicago and take one stop and then get to Bangkok. And you can do that in about 24 hours, sometimes 22. Yeah. But if you are coming from a smaller airport that feeds into O'Hare or that feeds into, a JFK or something like that, then obviously you have to add that time. And then in addition to that, that's just to get to Bangkok. So if you're trying to get to Samui, you're going to have to stop in Bangkok or Phuket, and maybe somebody else, but maybe someplace else. But Bangkok or Phuket, mostly Bangkok, and then you're going to end up having to have that layover, go through immigration in Bangkok, and then catch your flight to Koh Samui. So 35 hours is absolutely a reasonable time if you're just coming to Koh Samui. I would encourage you, if you're coming from the United States, not to just come for Samui, but actually to spend a little bit of time in Bangkok. I know that there are some things going on with the earthquake that just occurred. Bangkok is a little scary right now, but we've been to Bangkok dozens of times, and we've always had a really nice time.
Usually when we fly home and fly back from home, we usually spend a couple days in Bangkok on the way there and on the way home.
Yeah, just to enjoy the city.
And we still haven't seen everything.
No, we haven't.
So.
All right. So moving on to this kind of drama that's going on with Rick. He is very upset. He wants to go into town. He said, I'm going into town because he needs to get some, I'm saying weed. That's what he calls it, cannabis for the rest of us. And he and Chelsea jump into a tuk-tuk and they speed off to go get some weed for Rick. Now, I've seen one tuk-tuk a couple of times on Samui. It's not something that's conveniently located. You don't just jump out and find one. Have you ever seen?
No, I haven't
never
seen
ridden in one
tuk-tuks. They're all over Bangkok, obviously, but I've never seen one
right.
here. I think I saw one that was like at a shop and it was all like, it wasn't usable.
I almost think that maybe we saw it when it was here for the movie, but I'm not sure of that.
Okay, that could be too, yeah.
So Rick and Chelsea get to the weed shop, and he comes out of the weed shop, and he has this giant marijuana cigarette. And he has his pot, and he takes it out of the container, and he lights it up right there on the street.
I wouldn't do that.
No. It is not legal to smoke pot on the street in Thailand. So he's doing it. Maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't. But the message for anybody who's planning on coming to Koh Samui or any place in Thailand is you can have pot here and you can smoke pot here. You're just not supposed to smoke it in public.
But you will find that people do all the time if you go to the beach.
Don't say all the time.
Well, not all the time.
I've seen it once.
Well, a couple of beaches.
Okay, maybe twice.
When you're on the beaches and stuff, people will.
But it's not something
something
we
that
come in contact with.
When you're walking around the rest of the
risk
island, you don't see a lot of it. I mean, maybe at night, in the bar areas and stuff, you might see it a little more, but we really don't.
So he's having his drama, and he decides that he wants to go see this snake show. And on the very southern part of the island, and it's a neighborhood that I hadn't really heard of, or an area I haven't really heard of before, but it's kind of the due south part of the island. There is something called the Cobra Show, and you will see signs for it all around, and you can go see the Cobra Show. Now, I'm not sure if the Cobra Show that occurs on Samui looks anything like the Cobra Show on the video. My guess is, on the White Lotus. My guess is the one on the White Lotus is a little more rustic than the one in real life Thailand. But it kind of adds to the allure of the of the video. We understood that when they were casting for the White Lotus, they were looking for snake handlers as part of the casting call.
We don't know that they were looking for snake handlers, but there were snake handlers there
at the casting call. All right, and then during the Cobra, it's called Snake Show on the show on White Lotus. During the Snake Show, the gentleman who is kind of running the presentation at the Snake Show says that it takes 30 minutes for a cobra bite to kill you and 15 minutes to get to the hospital. And there are a lot of hospitals. I'm guessing they all probably have antivenom here on Samui. And I would also note that if the closest hospital is a government hospital, someone just recently told me that tourists can go to government hospitals. They're not as fancy as the international tourist hospitals here, but they and apparently less expensive. So if you wanted to go to a government hospital, you could, and you'd simply just pay in order to do that. And then, so that kind of ends that whole part of the Chelsea and Rick drama. And then it moves on to later on in the evening, and that those couples are on their double date, and they're at this amazing looking fire show. And there are
a lot of fire shows on the island. And a lot of the higher end resorts probably do their own fire shows on their beaches. Coco Tams, it's a lot of people know about it because it's a restaurant in Fisherman's Village.
And very fancy.
Touristy. It's a really nice restaurant, but they have a really good fire show. And I think, like, we went one night, we didn't have dinner there, but they had space for us to see the fire show. So they let us in, and we just had to, we bought a couple of drinks while we were watching the fire show, and that was
nice. It was during December.
I don't know if you can just go sit there and.
Well, you can sit outside the gate.
Sure. I don't know if you can get in there, get on the beach, and sit there without buying some.
My understanding is that you definitely need a reservation if you're going to want to get one of those closer seats.
We just happened to walk by and they had space for us, so we stopped.
We're back to the three women that have been friends since early childhood, and they talk a little bit about going to church. And that may have sparked the question in people's heads, can you celebrate your religion here on Koh Samui if you move here, or even if you're just on vacation on holiday here? And the answer is yes. There are many houses of worship, churches on the island. I know that there is the Russian Orthodox Church. Yeah. There is a Thai Catholic Church and a Catholic Church, which is kind of done mostly in English, and then a lot of other types of churches around the island. So definitely there are churches here on Samui for people who live here and for tourists. And then in a little bit after that, there's a conversation, Saxon.
Mm-hmm. About the full moon party?
About the full, he's saying that the full moon is a big holiday, right? And yes, the full moon, I don't know that I would say it's a big holiday on Samui. I would say that there's a giant party that happens on Koh Phangan, the full moon of every month, or sometimes I guess there's two full moons.
I think they do like a half full moon.
But the big deal is the full moon party. And yes, I mean, Koh Phangan is, I don't know, a half hour speedboat ride
We've stopped there.
We stopped there on the
yeah.
way to get to Koh Tao,
Yeah.
but it's just
not
a
far
half
away.
an hour speedboat ride in order to get there. And there are actually companies that do,
The full moon
transfers
tour. Yeah.
in order to get you
Pick
there.
you up.
So if you're here during a full moon, and you might want to go to a giant party, and I don't know how many
I
people
think it
with
goes
kids
all
do
night.
that.
No. DJs all over. And
Right.
It's
quite a big deal.
We've heard.
We've heard.
Never
We,
been.
we haven't. That's not
Don't
really.
have any desire to go.
Not
Those days are
really
behind.
little. You might have at one time done it.
earlier.
I probably would never have done it. So, and then the very last thing that I kind of wanted to bring up is that Rick, at the end of this particular episode, calls his old buddy Frank. And one thing that I would mention is, I think about your old buddy, and it sounds like maybe somebody you hadn't talked to in a while. And I would suggest that you might be able to get a hold of your old buddy Frank, or your old buddy anybody, if they're in Thailand, because if you have their US phone number, or their phone number for the UK or for Japan or Australia, wherever you lived, you can get an app that creates a WhatsApp number out of your US number, or whatever number of your country.
Your phone number.
Your phone number. And so you keep your phone number, and then you get a WhatsApp number, so that number is available no matter where you are around the world.
But it's the same number.
It is the same number.
Yeah.
So it's, in the case of the United States, you have your +1, and then it's your US number. In the case of Russia, it's your +7, then your Russian number. So it's very easy to do. It's very easy to get a hold of people. You don't have to worry about a SIM card if you don't want to have to mess with that. But WhatsApp is a great way to be able to get a hold of someone when you're out of the country, if you don't want to mess with the SIM card. So consider doing that if you're going to be visiting.
Well, you still have to get a SIM card.
Well, no, if you want to be on Wi-Fi the whole time.
Well, yeah, if you're on Wi-Fi, but if you're, okay.
Yeah. So that's episode 3, kind of in a nutshell. We'll be moving on to episode 4 shortly.
Big surprises coming in episode 4.
Things are getting a little darker. Things are getting
That's not what I was talking about, but
What's going on in episode?
episode 4.
Oh, big surprises in episode 4. Like and subscribe, and we will see you soon.